Okay, good morning, everybody. So this is our first review session for our Unit 4 test. Some of you have the writing response today, some of you are tomorrow. I figured we could talk about those sections first, if that sounds good to you. Okay. So when I'm looking at this time period, some of the big ideas that we looked at already are things like causes of the Civil War, some of the changes that happened in the United States before the war, like immigration. Then finally, Reconstruction, putting the country back together after the war. So let's talk about that. When we were talking about why immigration happens, we used the terms push and pull factors. So what are push factors? So push factors are reasons why people are pushed out of their old country. What are some examples of push factors? Reasons why people left during this time. Why would people leave their home? Famine. Okay. Right, we talked about Irish potato famine. Okay, where there's a drought or there's maybe a disease that affects a certain crop, and then you don't have enough food for everybody. Famine. What else? Could be a reason why people leave their home country. What's that? Or maybe they're escaping poverty. Maybe they're escaping persecution. Could be religious persecution, maybe ethnic persecution. Maybe they're escaping like the political dictators of the day, kings and queens, and autocrats. Those are push factors. But those are push factors. And we're also going to have pull factors, which are what? Why you come to the United States, right? What are some examples of pull factors? Land, lots of land available. They believe there's jobs available. They hear all about this freedom. They hear things about democracy. Now, does that play out for everybody? Does everyone get a job? Or everyone get land? And is there a land free of prejudice? No, that's not what happens. But this is what many people will hear about and believe, and because of that, will come to the United States. Okay, so these are causes. Okay, historical factors for why people might come to the United States. So, effects. What are some effects, some things that happen because of the mass immigration that happens before the Civil War? What's that? Yeah, okay, talk about that a little bit more. Between each other? Yeah, so there's conflict between each other. There's people who will become like anti-immigrant, right? Who are those people called? Nativists. or nativists are anti-immigrants. They want to stop the flow of immigration. Or we saw that political cartoon that made fun of the German and Irish immigrants by making them alcohol barrels and said that they were stealing the election. With the nativists, they even start their own political party, the Know Nothing Party. Okay. They were a party of nativists. They don't win any like major national elections, though. They don't gain that national popularity. Those are the two big effects that we talked about. Other effects could be things like more workers in northern factories. We have urbanization. So it means these big cities like New York are growing very quickly with immigrants. Any questions about immigration? These are just three topics that I thought would be good to talk about, think about. No reason, hypothetically. Okay. Cause of the Civil War. When we're looking at causes of the Civil War, we're looking at the sectional differences between the North and the South, and how increasingly it's becoming more and more violent or lending itself to violence. So there's a couple major events that leads us to the war, right? And almost all of it surrounds what we do with land and territory. First, we had the Missouri Compromise. Which said what? Yep. Territory north of Missouri will be free, but Missouri itself will be a slave state. So this kind of settles down the controversy for a while until we have the Mexican-American War. With the Mexican-American War, all of a sudden we got all this land and Southwest United States, and we're questioning, will that land be free or slave? Do we follow the Missouri Compromise or not? Mexican Cession, that's the land we get after the Mexican-American War. With Mexican Cession, the free or slave territories. Well, we have the Compromise of 1850 that decides what's going to happen. So first, MC Mexican Cession. See Mexican Cession. MC will use popular sovereignty to vote on it. People of the state get to vote on important issues. So when these territories are ready to become a state, the people in their state get to vote for it. It also said California will be a free state. It also created another law that didn't have to do necessarily with land, but had to do with freedom seekers, runaway slaves. What happened? Not yet. Fugitive slave law. So the South could go up into northern states, and if they found somebody they're going to accuse of being a runaway enslaved person, they could be captured and put back into slavery. This also led to many people who were born free being falsely accused of running away from plantations and being put into slavery anyway. So this is saying the Mexican session will have popular sovereignty, and this is politicians like, okay, this is a good thing because we don't have to decide. People can't get mad at us because it's people voting for it. And some said, why don't we do this with land that was decided under the Missouri Compromise? They do that in the Kansas-Nebraska Act. Where they say those territories can vote with popular sovereignty. However, then the vote becomes scarred because of, remember the border ruffians? These are Southerners who crossed over the border the day of the election to change and alter and steal the election. And the vote went their way. Kansas voted to become a slave state. However, Free Soilers cried foul. They said this is illegal. You violated the law, and they didn't accept the vote basically. And Kansas went to this kind of limbo period where they weren't a state, but it leads to this period we call Bloody Kansas. Yeah, I'm sorry, Bleeding Kansas. Okay. Right, where we have civilians, individuals not in the military, fighting against each other. And like we all have revenge killing. John Brown comes and kills a bunch of people in the middle of the night while they're sleeping. Leads us to the Dred Scott case. Remember, he was an enslaved man who was brought to a northern state, Wisconsin, and then Minnesota. And he said, well, if I'm in a northern state where it's illegal to have slaves, I should be free. The Supreme Court said a few things in the court case. What are some things that it said? Yep, slaves are not citizens. They're property. Okay, so they can't sue. And then they're also going to say the government can't take away property. So this is essentially making it legal to for a enslaver to bring their enslaved people to any state, even if slavery is illegal there. And then I'll finish off talking about John Brown again. John Brown did one more thing that made him super famous around the country. What did he do? Yeah. And that was at Harper's Ferry. Try to start a slave rebellion. stealing a bunch of guns, giving them to enslaved people. Didn't work. He was captured, put on trial, convicted, and executed. Southerners were shocked by this, shocked that a white person would go to such lengths to start a slave rebellion. They begin to believe that the North is becoming increasingly radicalized. And so they get jittery. When it's the next presidential election, it's 1860, and Lincoln is running. Lincoln is a free soiler. What's a free soiler? Stop slavery from spreading into the territories. He's not attempting or saying that slavery should end in the South or anything like that, but the South is nervous now. They feel like if Lincoln gets elected, he's going to try to end slavery. And so when Lincoln is elected in 1860, that's when 7 states secede. All of them are in the Deep South. So the Lincoln's election was the last straw for a big portion of the southern states. The other ones would not secede until after Lincoln called for volunteers to go down to the South into the rebellion and stop it. Okay, questions about causes of the Civil War? Okay. Next one is on Reconstruction. Maybe. These could be good questions for short answer though. Maybe I'll think about that for next year. Anyway, so during Reconstruction, we have kind of 2 competing sides of this, right? We have the radicals and freedmen versus the redeemers. Who are the redeemers? Yeah, these are the old Southern leaders who had control before the Civil War. They're trying to regain the control again. Okay, so we have this kind of fight between these 2, right? Where radicals and the freedmen want to do things like punish the South, and help the freedmen. And so they're going to do things like create the Freedmen's Bureau. Remember, that was Northerners who came down in the South to help educate, help give health care to recently freed African Americans. That's the Freedmen's Bureau. Redeemers are going to try to counter this and counter the end of slavery by creating black codes that are going to basically recreate the system of slavery, but just not using the word slave. They'll use the word like servant and stuff like that. And so to counter the black codes, then the North creates the Civil Rights Act, which basically said that African Americans were citizens. However, they're afraid that if the radicals lose power in Congress, those laws could go away. So they are going to create a series of amendments to the Constitution, which makes it much more difficult, like 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. So what was 13? We need to like memorize 13, 14, 15. 13 is freeing slaves, so this gets rid of slavery. 14? Citizens, yep, give citizenship. Yeah, you can't have like a voting restriction that says a certain race cannot vote. Okay, so this protects voting. And the way I remember it is it kind of creates a little sentence. Look, free citizens vote. Okay, makes a little sense. Free citizens vote. Protects voting rights based on race. But we already talked about how southern states and redeemers are going to try to counter this, right? What are some ways that southern states try to counter the 15th Amendment voting protections? Literacy tests, poll tax. I might add some stuff over here. I'm not quite sure yet. So black codes, literacy tests, poll tax. Okay, those last two are voting restrictions. But also you could add the KKK in there. We talked about the KKK, a hate group that would target African Americans and other Republicans in the South. They would use intimidation so that they would not vote for certain candidates. They're trying to take away political power. They're trying to take away political power from Black politicians. After the 15th Amendment, we have hundreds of thousands of African Americans voting for the first time. It leads to thousands of Black politicians being elected into office. However, through the power of redeemers, we're going to see a lot of violence using things like the KKK and other groups that are going to do things like in in New Orleans, Black politicians were kicked out of office by a mob of violent offenders. In South Carolina, where Black politicians were voted into office, a mob of people went and tried to attack the community and ended up killing hundreds of people. So there's going to be this back and forth. Okay, we're going to do the 15th Amendment to protect voting rights. Okay, we're going to do literacy tests and poll tax. Okay, we're still going to vote in the. So it's kind of like this back and forth we have of trying to gain rights that are being denied, and then trying to change the law in southern states to take away those rights from people. So the North are going to try to ensure that laws are being followed in the South, like the Civil Rights Act, like the 14th Amendment. And so they're going to send the army down into the South. And that was through the Reconstruction Acts created by the Republican Party. And the South hates this. They do not want the army in the South. They don't want to be told what to do. And that's going to be one of their number one goals, to get the North out of the South. Okay, because not only is the army coming to the South, but through things like the Freedmen's Bureau, we have carpetbaggers coming down the South. These are Northerners who are, in some cases, trying to help the freedmen. Other cases, they're just like trying to make some money off of the destroyed Southern economy. And there's a lot of violence done toward carpetbaggers too. It will target them as well. Okay. Eventually, we see a anticlimactic climax with the Compromise of 1877. North gets something, South gets something. What does the North get? Hayes as president. What does the South get? What's that? Army leaves, yeah. This essentially is going to end Reconstruction. And Hayes as president, he's pretty much going to let the South do whatever they want. Remember we saw that one cartoon where it had President Hayes and he was not using the guns and the carpetbag to come down in the South anymore. Instead, he was using it to farm the South, and they called it the let them alone policy. leaving the South alone policy, let them do what they want. And this basically is going to increase the use of literacy tests, poll taxes. While the KKK's membership will decline during this time, the number of killings and violence would remain constant. Black codes would be replaced with Jim Crow laws, which we'll talk about in the next unit. And the system of helping African Americans in the South to regain a place in society falls apart. We made it. 8:20, everybody. Questions about anything up here? Okay, so I will put this video on Google Classroom, so you can watch that later if you'd like. Otherwise, I will be talking about kind of similar things during SP30 today. So if you have any questions, just let me know. Thanks, everyone.